Welcome to the In-Betwixt and the In-Between.
This is Leadership Limbo,
Podcast aimed at helping leaders embrace the discomfort and power of leading themselves and others in the midst of it all. We blend real insight with practical tools to help you lead with self-awareness, purpose, and influence wherever you are on your leadership journey. I'm John. Josh, hello. How are you today?
Hey, John.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well. Not as if we haven't already been on this call for 45 minutes before it, but it's good to officially see you on the podcast airwaves.
Yeah, super pumped to get us going here today. And this is our first episode of what we hope are many here on the Liminal Leadership Podcast. Josh and I thought, in terms of starting with some introductions, we'd actually introduce each other a bit. And we're just going to kind of take it away here. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh to introduce me, to get us going here.
Yeah, what an honor to be able to introduce my good friend, John Clark. So for those who are listening, odds are in these first few episodes, you might be tuning in because you know us, which is great. But for those who might be new listeners, want to just make sure that you also know who is kind of behind or in your earpieces right now, or if you're watching some of this on video, who we are. So John is a longtime personal friend. We've shared very similar career arcs for nearly the last 20 years. John is a career educator, school founder of one of the highest performing middle schools here in the city of Denver. John has worked across a number of different school organizations and school buildings, across leadership roles, as well as a teacher early in his career. And John is also the founder of Best Days Consulting, which is a business and a consulting group that is out there to help schools be their very best selves and create more great days and best days inside buildings. John's a diehard Notre Dame fan. You knew that was going to have to come up on the podcast. So John and I also share that interest as well. Both of us are actually graduates of Notre Dame just a few years ago. It's actually a lot more than a few years. And John is also a proud father of three lovely children and a beautiful wife, and located here in the city of Denver. So really grateful to be sharing this podcast time with John over this next chapter as just a trusted friend, advisor, and professional insight provider. Really excited to be part of this journey with you, man.
Great. And I'll take it away from here. I'm here to introduce Josh Hugo from the greater Chicago area originally. Josh spent some bit of time in, obviously, Chicago growing up, South Bend, Indiana, to attend the greatest university in the land. Some time in Mobile, Alabama, through the ACE program, which is another common element of ours, was we both were part of the ACE teaching program through the University of Notre Dame before making the journey out to Colorado, where he's been here for a bit. Josh jumped into some work with the SST Public Schools, where we ultimately kind of lined up professionally again, where he opened two different schools, Green Valley Ranch, one of the top performing schools in the city, as well as Conservatory Green Middle School, along with me when we started that. Through that time, Josh has been a teacher, a founding dean of students, a founding associate director, interim principal at a high school, worked at all various grade levels from 6 through 12. And so, Josh has since then has broken off and done some work with Pearson. He has formed Peak Strategies now, which stands for People IQ, is what that stands for. I encourage you to check it out, where Josh's real big focus is on supporting teams to develop a mindset of just team orientation and working together, especially in a kind of more automated world. What do we do to actually build engaged teams? And so I encourage you to look at Josh for that. Josh has two lovely boys and his partner, Lindy, who he lives with currently, and their dog. What's your dog's name? Forget your dog's name. Bodie.
Bodie's a Vizsla Lab. He's a good boy.
Vizsla Lab. So Julie Clark, listen to that. He's got a Vizsla too, but it's a Vizsla Lab. It's more intense than yours even. But more importantly, I am so excited to just call Josh a friend and a colleague who I talk a lot about just generally life with, but a lot about leadership and what it means to lead no matter where you're at. And that's what today's about. It's really about jumping into what is our focus here. What do we hope to get out of this? And what do we hope that you get out of it? And so I'll turn it to Josh a little bit about why are we here. Josh, what's the story that brought you here today for what we're attempting to do with this podcast?
Yeah, thanks, John, and appreciate the introduction. And yeah, we've spent a lot of time thinking about what it means to really lead from the middle. And my own journey, as John illuminated, has been primarily through school leadership in schools across a number of different environments where I was often as an associate director and kind of in between lots of layers of leadership and managing and leading a lot of people while also having leaders and managers who were responsible for either my own development and my day-to-day tasks and sometimes more distant. And I think that one of the challenges that led me to bring this idea up with John, and I think we came to it very mutually, was it feels like a lot of leadership books and a lot of leadership podcasts and a lot of leadership insights are generally directed towards the number one, right? Leading from the very top, leading as like how to be the best leader as a CEO or as a director or as somebody who is almost assumed behind that sort of conversation as having a degree of almost hierarchical ownership over everything as a leader. And the reality is, I don't think any level of leadership, having been in charge of an entire school and also being kind of in that middle level leadership, any level of leadership really exists without having some degree of tension to navigate between multiple different levels, both on your interior as well as externally. And so we really wanted to get to a medium or a set of mediums, whether through our professional ventures at this moment or through this podcast or through literature and writing and blogs, try to share insights about what it really looks like to operate in the middle. And that's kind of what brought me here today. And I know your story is somewhat similar, John, but would love for you to kind of add to that and add some color to your own journey to this point.
Yeah. Before, we're talking about use of literature. When you're talking about number one, I can't help but think of Nelly's I am number one.
Yeah,
That
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah. He should listen to this podcast.
He should listen
Nelly,
to
we're coming for you, baby. We're going to hashtag that, put country grammar right up against liminal leadership as the top two influences related to Nelly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a lot of similarities to my reason for being here is Josh, but I think from a young age, I think people would have identified that for whatever reason I fell or moved my way into just spots of leadership, right? And sometimes that was just out of the desire to kind of take charge and have a voice in things, but I think a lot of times it was just trying to give a platform for others through the way that I presented myself and helping them. It was not too often, I think, terribly just about wanting to be number one. I think right now in my work, it's kind of aiming to be behind the scenes and helping leaders because I like that maybe more than being the top dog, right? And so I think I've had a lot of experience in my own career. I moved into leadership pretty quickly, but was in that a short amount of time before being asked to found a school, right? And it was just one of those moments where, hey, here's a calling, go do it. I did it. There was another time where after I left that after several years, hey, we're in need. It's the midst of a pandemic. This school is really in need of a leader. We know you have a background for this. Can you come help them through this? I did that. And so some of those experiences were really good. I've been lucky enough to work with some pretty great places, but at times it was challenging. Sometimes I don't think it was ideal, but I learned a lot. And then I think there were times where being in those levels of leadership wasn't good in things that I've done. And I think this is a podcast really aimed at people. I don't care if you're very early in leadership. Frankly, even if you're in a spot where you're maybe not defined as a specific leader, I think we wanted to put something together that just help people, whether you're 20, even younger, or, you're in your 50s or 60s and you're kind of figuring out a new stage of leadership. We hope you're able to listen to it and understand that whatever you're in the midst of, whatever you're in the middle of, we're here to give ideas. We're here to help you out. Really want to help people who are navigating good situations, but you don't know where your leadership is taking you, or heaven forbid, really bad situations that maybe no level of advice we can give you other than maybe having the courage to move out is the right thing to do, right? So I think just really wanting to know, both of us having been in the middle of things before, whether it's middle level manager or you're responsive to what is defined as the number one, really just about giving you the space and ideas here to help you navigate that, both internally and I think kind of within the group you're leading as well.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I think this would be helpful for our audience at this point if you haven't already Googled what the word liminal means, and no problem if you have, because it's not the most common word. And we actually spent a lot of time thinking about, do we go with liminal because it has nice alliteration with leadership? And it wasn't just alliteration. It was actually the fact that we believe the word defines more precisely what we're actually hoping to speak to. But the word liminal really derives from, it comes out of anthropology. It's a word often used in conjunction with this phrase of in betwixt and in between, but kind of just being in the middle of stages, potentially of identities, of people, of roles. It's almost like a purgatory at some level, is maybe a different term to use, kind of that space of not super well defined.
Mm.
And when it comes to the work that we do engage in our own careers up to this point, and in the work we currently do, there is a lot of reflection that happens about being in this space on the interior, but also how to activate that interior understanding into strategies to better lead both yourself and others. And so liminal, and John, you add to this, but like liminal really is that in between sort of space, and space is physical space, or even more of the ethereal or less clearly defined space. What would you add or adjust to that?
Yeah, I think after much debate, liminal became a really good spot for us to think about something of like, hey, these are about leaders. I think at some level when we first got about this, we said, hey, we want to hit those mid-level executives, those mid-level leaders who maybe don't have a podcast aimed at them, and how they both are managing folks, that's difficult in and of itself, but then being managed and responding to a larger network. So there is that literal spot of being in the middle. But like all leadership, we also began to think, well, there's something internal about leadership, right? There's something about figuring out myself and my identity. And the idea of liminal really allowed us to say, hey, this is about a podcast that really speaks to, hey, how do you manage being a leader in that space? But also, how do you manage yourself a little bit? And so I think it gives us that flexibility to jump between those two ideas. It's not completely internal and self-awareness. It's a lot of that. And it's not completely just like, here's a tool for how to manage your folks better. We believe it's a crossover of both of those things. And so real excited about this. I also think liminality is about a spot of transition that's hopeful, that when you're in that space, it helps you, and you're thinking about it, it helps you to think about how to be better in that space. So in that way, it's less of just like, I'm stuck and I don't know what to do,
Right.
but it's about, hey, it's okay to be in the middle. And this is actually helping you to define who you are a bit better as well.
Yeah. I'm glad that, I think that's a beautiful summary of kind of what the big picture purpose of what we're getting at here is. And the last part you said, John, resonated with me, which was essentially giving permission to acknowledge that you can very much be in a formal position of leadership and still very much feel like you're in the middle. And this is not, to your
Yeah.
point, this is not just for middle management. This is for people who might be a chief executive officer or a founder or somebody who does lead from the very quote unquote top. But it's a way of giving permission to name that you can sit in this space and almost recognize, I think, as new leaders, new managers, you often walk into a role and say, all right, well, I have this title, I have this positional authority, I have the ability to set policy and hire and fire people. You have some power that comes with it. And I think one of the learnings that happen early in leadership is recognizing that power and authority alone are not enough to truly create the type of impact you want to have as a leader. And influence really is in my personal belief, is the way to truly lead is through influence. And then that creates impact. And when you recognize that and you start to think about influence, it doesn't mean that your position by itself is going to do that. And it means that you do have to toggle between different inputs and different levels of people that you're working with and people, quote unquote, above and around you. And so I think the concept of leadership, even at its broadest level, is kind of liminal no matter what, because there's just so many things that you have to be thinking about and responding to and absorbing. And when you're in that space and naming that you can experience that regardless of a title, regardless of your positional authority, it opens the door to make impact in your work and really, as John shared, take that time to think about both the inward and the outward levels of leadership. So
Yeah.
I think, John, maybe for a little bit here, do you want to help, define a little bit of, you've mentioned who the audience is here, but anything else you want to share if somebody's made it this far? Hopefully you are the audience for this podcast, but would you add anything else to like who we're hoping listens to this and get something out of it?
Yeah, and I even think before I go into who this is for, Josh, the one thing I also hope that we take from this is that there is this how you know, to the point of influence on others. We hope also like power often is not going to give people the life they want. It's not going to create the life or the conditions you want. And so I think we hope it's a lot about that too. How do I lead? How do I build relationships? And how do I use my influence to create a great leadership and experience for others that work with me? But also, I think to really begin to dive into what do you want for yourself and what do you want that to feel like. And so, who is this for? We hope it's for you. Obviously, we hope it's for you. And we've already, as we've named, we do think it's for mid-level leaders. Maybe you're new to leadership and you have the boss above you. Perhaps you're kind of the top within whatever it might be, your organization or your school, or your place of work. We hope in that space that you're using it to get an insight into what your middle level leaders are thinking about. But also, we also know everyone's in the middle of something. You're either responding to a board, you're responding to constituents, you are in the middle of something as a leader. And that tension always between who am I responding to and who am I leading is something that we hope to really dive into here and that you'll be a part of. And so we do think this is a different audience, as Josh said earlier. I think a lot of leadership podcasts are more about that. You're number one, you're in a position of leadership. How do you set yourself up for that? We actually hope to get a little bit messier of like knowing what it's like when you may not have the influence that you want or the decision making you want, or you're beholden to others, and how do you navigate that tension? So
Yeah, well said.
that's kind of what we're going for here. I think Josh would be great to hear what we've been talking about in terms of a structure of what people can expect from these podcasts, because I think that can further speak to how we hope they can use these as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that line you said, you're always in the middle of something as a leader.
Yeah.
I think that is very true. So in terms of how we hope to provide information and insights for everyone listening is we want to keep these short. So we're aiming to keep these in the 20-minute range. Our vision is that these could even be clips that you listen to at a leadership team meeting and say, hey, let's tune into these 10 minutes. Let's listen to this insight, or this potentially it's a tool, a question that we're posing, and it could be used actually in the place of your work. So we want these to be short. We want these to be to the point, and we're planning, don't hold us to this commitment, but our goal is to release these, I believe, every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so to really, create a routine for our listeners to kind of say, hey, what's the insight this week? What's the challenge that they're facing, that they're discussing? So would you add anything to that, John? Does that capture?
Yeah, no, I think that captures it. I think the one thing is just that we hope to have really one pretty clear topic each week that we'll dive into. Josh and I hope this is conversational to a certain degree, but I think you're going to also see one of us kind of leading the charge on it in terms of here's the concept we're talking about today. Here's a strategy, some questions you might ask, and have a conversation with the other person around that. So tuning in will allow you to get one insight into one thing, and less so of a kind of wandering podcast covering a variety of topics in a way that we hope makes it more digestible and usable regularly.
Yeah, very well
Let's
said.
talk about what's coming up, Josh. I'm sure people would like to hear what we're kind of thinking we want to unpack in the next several episodes, next few months. Why don't you take it away from there?
Yeah, so I think big picture, thinking about our kind of next chapter of this podcast would be, we're thinking through about 4 phases, and it really is going to start with like, what does the middle mean? And so today we just painted a very high level of concepts that we will talk about, but better defining instances, examples, moments, scenarios that define what it means to be leading in the middle. And so we'll spend some time there. Then we're going to move to what we've talked about a bit today, is that interior work. So kind of leading yourself as a focus. And what are the strategies? What are the challenges of leading yourself? What are some tools that we hope to provide that will be able to help you better understand what it means to lead yourself and how to do it? From there, we then kind of transition to what it means to lead others. And that order is very deliberate. You can lead others without leading yourself, but I will put the caveat that you're probably not going to do it very effectively or impactfully. So we really do believe in the concept of leading yourself before you're leading others. And obviously, if you're already in a leadership role, you're doing both right now. But the goal of how we lay this out is thinking about it kind of at the more macro level. And then that last part is about the concept of being led. And, we talked about this recently as one of the challenges as a leader is really understanding what your level of authority actually is in relation to other levels of authority in matrixed organizations, bigger spaces, and even sometimes in your own family. So that kind of paints a big picture of kind of where we hope to go longer term. John, anything that you want to kind of add or react to with that?
And I think amidst all of that, there's things we'd love to cover based on what we're hearing from folks or things that pop up in our own life. So, we could veer away from those to talk about some other ideas. But, as I think summer comes to an end and people are, recommitting to their teams or kind of coming back together after people take time off. Certainly if you work in a school, this is crunch time for getting teams established and going forward. We really hope to be kind of responsive to that and hope you'll use it as a way to, in this middle part of the year, reinvest in yourself as a leader a little bit as well. And so, I think with that, going to leave you with a few questions that Josh and I came up with that we hope you use to think about for the next time that we come together. How have you thought about your leadership in relation to being in a liminal space? I would really encourage you to think about that. If you're in a really in-between place in your work, that you're responding to your boss or to your, those that sit above you higher in the org chart, but you're also managing people and you're feeling that tension. How have you thought about your leadership? How have you defined it? Or think about internally, if you're struggling a little bit, not understanding how you are meant to lead, sit with that discomfort and try to figure out what it means to be in that space so that you can begin to do the process of working through it. Lastly, what other topics related to liminal leadership that you'd like to have us cover here in the weeks to come? Begin to think about that. Think about what you can get from listening to this. And we hope to drop something again soon. And so with that, Josh, I'll let you take us out.
Yeah, thanks, John. And if you're listening to this on whatever platform, please leave those questions, ideas in the comment section. We'll make sure to be reading and responding to those. And also, please hit subscribe. It helps us to make sure we know who our audience is, so we're meeting the needs of those who are listening to this, and also helps spread the message of what we're trying to bring into our communities. Without any further ado, until next time, this has been our first episode of Liminal Leadership. We thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we really look forward to the journey ahead. And so, like I said, please hit subscribe, share this with your friends, and we'll see you in the in-between.